Aaron Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey there, it's Saturday night at about 9:45. We're going to do a live update weather for you for the storm system on Monday to see if all the hubbub is still worth the hubbub. We'll take a look at the new data just rolled in. That's why I'm a few minutes late. It comes in very late this time of the year just because we do the time change. So to get into that extended 48-hour plus window, I got to wait a few more minutes so I can take a look at it. So we're going to do that here for you. Then we can show you what's happening, what's shaking and baking. Thanks for watching out there in Rumble Land. Also for you guys in YouTube, I see you checking in. And also, of course, on Facebook. I'm going to put the links to where you can join my live broadcast channel. In other words, it's just like a little messenger, Facebook Messenger deal, so that you'll get notified when I go live. So I'll put that in the chat. What is this? There's some group called Weather Updates, and when I put my little weather update list on Facebook, it automatically takes you to Pakistan. Weather updates. What in the world? I don't have time to even go into that. I'm probably not even legit. So anyway, all right, put that on there for the group. There you go. Okay, so that's all done. So I think all my housekeeping is squared away. I was gonna do a little live earlier today, but just didn't have time. So, you know, life happens sometimes, right? Okay, so I think I got all that stuff done. So let's move on. I'm gonna load this thing up real quick so we can get a better view. I'm gonna do this one. Okay, excellent. Out there currently, 73 degrees. It's actually really nice. It's a nice little breeze. It was a nice day today. Warm, sunny. I mean, you can't go wrong with that kind of stuff, right? But moisture is on the increase here for tonight, and then you're definitely going to feel it tomorrow on into Monday as those dew points return to the sticky levels. Let's take a look at, let's see, make sure I do something here real quick. I did want to give a little shout out so when I can see it. So Matthew, thank you for the stars on Facebook. Somebody beat you to it up the top, but I can't see it because I couldn't scroll good enough. Nanette, thank you as well. Ron, as always. Who else we got? Katina, thank you very much. Evan, appreciate you guys. Okay, so let's take a look here at the map for the state and into the entire U.S. So our big story we're talking about with this upper level low that was going to be coming in a little like so, then zipping through down like something like this, okay? Well, the last time I think I checked in with you, you know, we had the low that was kind of coming in. First it looked like it was here, then all of a sudden it was going to start to zip up to here. So what it was doing is starting to do a little bit of jog to the north. Well, that's going to change some things the further north it goes for us in Oklahoma. And that kind of shifts more of the inclement weather, so to speak, kind of in this area. So in other words, Nebraska and Kansas, and with only maybe a potential for a couple down here in Oklahoma, you usually kind of get a cap to work with, so you have to bust the cap to make that happen. So when I saw that new trend, I made a little quick post about it, and I said we'll deal with it later when we get over the weekend. Because remember, we can't really start talking about the hype of severe weather and tornadoes and stuff beyond 48 hours out. This is going to be a prime example as to why. All right, so this is going to be the model trend. So looking at the NAM model, and we're going to see how far off it was just in the last 2 days. So this was from a couple days ago. All right, so I'm going to just step through time. Look what it did there. Did you see that? It moved it here in just one model run. Then it moved it here. Okay, and then it moved it over here. And I believe it's pretty much stayed there. Yeah, it's just kind of meandered just a little bit. Actually kind of meandered up to the north. There you go. And that's the last one. Okay, so in other words, we are now here. So originally from here, then to here, and now here. All in the span of about 5 to 6 days. So the difference here, two things, twofold. One is the track. All right, so the track is now way northwest of Oklahoma to the northern parts of Colorado. Secondly, instead of being over here, it's over here, which means it's behind. It's slow. It's late to the party. Well, at 6 and 7 o'clock, when you peaked your daytime heating, you want this storm system back in this vicinity. Well, that's another several hundred miles back to the north and west, which means it's all out of whack. So everything is not timed well. And that typically means, it's a bust, and you don't get much in the way of storms. Now, still think we probably will here across this area. I'm going to go into the detail for you. But that's the big story. That's the big change. And so if you start to hear a bunch of downplaying all of a sudden, that's the main reason. And again, that's why you don't want to get too excited over that stuff. But let's talk about the Storm Prediction Center did have in the latest updates here before they take a look at new data, which they'll do tonight and tomorrow. They still had an enhanced risk over central Oklahoma up to the north and southern Kansas, and then back out here into the just to the eastern sides of the Panhandle, and then a bigger slight risk area. Remember, this is all a probability. This is basically guesswork. In other words, if I had to guess, the area, the maximum extent coverage where you'll see some storms, and I had to paint a big brush because I can't get really too specific yet, this is what that means. All right, so it always has room for improvement as you get closer to the event. Now, again, this is their view on the right on a 2-split panel. This is the learning language model over here on the left, in other words, AI. It favored a little sweet spot here in southern Nebraska and also down here in southwest Oklahoma and northwestern Texas. And this was the run that came in, let's see, was it earlier this morning? So it'll run again later on tonight, and it'll once again fine-tune. But this actually started out here, then went west, and now it went southwest. So it's trying to play catch-up, too, based off the patterns. In other words, it did not predict that shift in the pattern that is ongoing now. So again, this will be changed, and this will be adjusted tomorrow, and also, of course, in a Monday. But again, this is the old outlook that they're still keeping until they have more confidence that there will be no more movement in the model data, and therefore we'll get what we get. All right, so here's a look at the upper level wind field with that. At 300 millibars, we've got a nice little flow here to the southwest, but it's again over way out to our west from New Mexico and the Panhandle. We're kind of on the fringe here, and we're actually in the subsidence side of the jet. It's the wrong quadrant for us. Now, if this back end of the quadrant moves overhead, it would be, but that's going to be another 6 hours, which, again, is going to be helping to trigger a little bit of thunderstorms late after hours. Let's take a look here at the 500 millibar pattern. So we do have a nice jet streak that is moving through the areas. That still stays the same. So that's favorable. So what we're looking for is basically just shear in the environment for turning winds with height and speed. So you want speed and directional shear. All right, so this is the 850 millibar level, and we still have a good low-level jet coming in. So good wind field here to speak of. However, I do notice there is a little weakness here during the late afternoon, early evening. So as this translates up to the north a little bit, if you were to have any storms in this area, that would become a weakness for those thunderstorms. Now we do have more winds up here that will probably take their place later on, but there's some mismatch here in the wind field that could help to reduce storm coverage or intensity. All right, here's a look at the surface parameter with the dew point values, etc. So again, we're looking at the high-res NAM model for this forecast, and the dew point, or the dry line rather, goes in something like this. Now the dry line is just a measure where you have these dry southwesterly winds with dew point values around single digits to low teens, and then on the east of that you have dew point values in the 60s. So what's the difference? Well, if you're on the east of the dry line, it's muggy to you. You go west, it's dry as a bone, and all of a sudden your skin starts flaking. How about that? And also there's a higher fire danger when you have lower humidities, lower dew points out here. But anyway, this is a convergence line where you have the winds come in from the south-southeast, meeting with these winds out of the south-southwest. And we get these little bulges. This is kind of a favorite area, usually for thunderstorms to develop when you have a little bulge like that. And also maybe down this little bulge here. But this is at specific time on the window here is at 7 o'clock. And this will move as the whole storm system starts to move east. And this has become a interesting focus area here in the data here in a minute, and also this one right here. So those will be two areas we're going to focus on for where I believe some thunderstorms probably will get going. Here's a look at the NAM model, and we talk about the CAPE, in other words, the raw measure of instability when you factor in the heat and humidity. So the CAPE values up around 3,000, which is plenty of fuel for the severe thunderstorms to develop and feed on. Also shear, it's a nice little component here. You have a southeast wind at the surface, mid-level wind out of the south, and then upper-level wind out of the southwest. So this is a staircase turning with height from right to left. So like a corkscrew. Just go up, it's like a stairway corkscrew. So it's really good turning for supercell storms. In other words, you want storms to rotate, to produce tornadoes. You would want that kind of a favorable triangle-looking pattern. This is even a more favorable pattern out here, but they don't have any cape to go with it. So you have to have the cape and the shear overlaid in most cases. Here in Kansas, really good shear up in this vicinity. Even really over most of Oklahoma, and really even most of Texas. So really good shear profile overall. It's just most of the instability is kind of anchored along the dry line, kind of in this little sweet spot during the early evening hours. All right, so we knew we'd have that to work with. Now, again, we're going to focus in this area here because I think this is going to be one of the little hot spots that will probably try to bust right around, break the cap around 6 o'clock or so. We do look at the, let's see, do I want to use this one? We'll use this one for now. This kind of tells the tale of what I want to show you first. So this is the significant tornado parameter. In other words, if you were to kind of put in all the special ingredients that could produce a tornado, for the atmosphere, where's the most favorable region? So it kind of plots a little spot up here in northwest Oklahoma along that little dryline bulge. So if you were to click a point forecast sounding for that one, you would see a lot of analogs in here that has hail anywhere from 2 to almost 4 inches in diameter, a lot of supercell deals. If it did produce a tornado, it's up on the high end of maybe an EF4 type signature here. Lifting condensation levels quite low, nice turning with height in the lower levels of the atmosphere. You still have a cap right here. So what that would do, that would limit thunderstorm development to just maybe 1 or 2 that could break along that cap due to the convergence on the dry line. And a lot of these other indices also say that would be a pretty significant storm, both wind and hail, etc. Okay, so in other words, the model favors that region. Now, if we go in the next 3 hours, look what happens. Then the model shifts out here to the west into Texas Panhandle, closer to the dry line. Now, there's a lot more dry air to mix in with this. Still a little bit of a cap here. Still, obviously, a tornado potential here on the forecast sounding. But again, this is what's going to be important. Temperatures are dropping down to 67 degrees, and the cap should actually start to be building in this same area. So if I'm going to go the next to 6 hour window, we still have this little hot spot here. Again, we can just, every time you plot a forecast sounding in those sweet spots, it's always going to look ominous, just so you know, because we're trying to track a sweet spot. If a storm were to happen to go into this favorable environment, it would have a lot to work with. Now, by 9Z, this is about like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, then everything starts to diminish. You've lost all your daytime heating, so all the indices come down. So you have that lag effect of instability. So even though there's a little bit of residual here in central Oklahoma, it's nothing what it was before. So that typically tells you is that really the best storms, if they even go, will be out across the western parts of the state into the eastern panhandle of Texas. So here's a look at that cap or sin layers that we talked about. All right, so if you have anything that's in the, let's just say above what we call here a minus 50, so it's a pretty good cap. We're in minus 200, minus 300, way down minus 500 you get to Dallas. All right, so let's go to the, that was for the noontime temperature, just kind of show you what happens. In the afternoon, it starts to get a little weaker in this area because you have that pooling of the moisture near the dryline area. And this is that dryline bulge right here that shows up. So this is where our cap is eroding. All right, this is where along the leading edge of it, that it should weaken enough to allow some thunderstorms to develop. Now, I don't even believe the models produce a storm here, but I like the indices to show me that they should have. Pretty good cap down here, though, in northwest Oklahoma. But let's see, let's go to the next 3 hour window. All right, so the cap still builds back in here, so we've lost our sweet spot here, and then, like we said, remember we had that little indice up here, looked pretty good. So it looks like the models do favor one little sweet spot here, maybe east of Amarillo. Might get a thunderstorm to go in that environment. Again, assuming this nothing changes and doesn't move around a little bit. And then we go into, but you see a strong cap elsewhere here across the state. Matter of fact, let me show you what that looks like here in Oklahoma City. If I put a forecast sounding here for you for 9 o'clock. So what we're working with here, you couldn't get a storm here if you wanted to. Look at this thing. This right here, this big old red line nudging like this, that's the cap. So if you want thunderstorms, you don't want a red line like that. You want a line that would go like this in this case. So this little jot that you see to the right, that's a storm killer. All right. Otherwise, if you have decent shear and etc., but they're doing any good if you've got a really strong cap. And we got a massive cap over the entire state, all of tomorrow into tomorrow evening, with only a couple areas where it weakens enough to might allow a thunderstorm. Let's go to 6Z. It's right around midnight or so, and this is where we have in the data no cap here, but it's probably because it's probably producing a few thunderstorms. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute. Otherwise, It did favor one little spot here, but we're still capped elsewhere over the state. And let's go to the late evening. Yeah, so that's what's happening, because we do have the upper level energy kicking through, the surface flow kicking through, the dry line kicking through. So that's going to change this environment during the late evening hours. But let's see if there's any storms to work with at this point in time. Okay, so let's do another thing we talked about. The European had hinted at some rainfall on Monday. And if it rains during the day, the odds of getting severe weather later on is a lot lower, because it stabilizes the atmosphere somewhat. And basically just made it, what it really does, it keeps it too cool and you don't get to heat up. You really need to heat up to break the cap or make it weaker. So let's say 11 o'clock, we got some sprinkle activity, some clouds all the way down from here to Childress on Monday in the afternoon. Still lots of clouds, lots of showers. You might even have an elevated thunderstorm, might have a little tiny hail with it or something. Through 5 o'clock, look at this, is rain, man. And we need just to click a forecast sounding on that. The two lines here, the red and green, when they come together, that's just about 100% saturation in most cases. What that means is a lot of high clouds, mid clouds, thick clouds, and maybe even some light showers, like I said, or sprinkles. Underneath that, you still have a cap, and you still have a temperature now much cooler because of the rain that moved through. And I'll show you the temperatures here in a second. So let's go to 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Where are the thunderstorms, right? It's Monday. Aren't we supposed to be having widespread, Katie barred the door, thunderstorms? I don't see anything in this model. It is bone dry. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Where do we get some storms? There we go. Down this little area here in northwestern Texas at midnight. So those things go up and they start to produce. However, again, what does the cap look like at that point in time? Well, big one. All right, so what this means is these thunderstorms are going to have to work with this elevated instability here, this little sweet spot. So that just usually means some hail, possibly some damaging winds, but otherwise just a thunderstorm with a temperature of 68 degrees at the surface. So you don't really have any surface instability to work with. So that means these thunderstorms here should be elevated evening thunderstorms that are moderately severe. Let's go to the 2 o'clock. Now we have a line that's gone up, because at this point in time, let me back up here. Where's my dry line? Yeah, so let's do this. Let's step this forward. That was at 7 o'clock. Let's see, that's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12, and 1. That dry line doesn't move at all. It's still out there at midnight in the 1 a.m. in the western Texas panhandle. So that's where all your convergence is. Looks like a signal of a storm popping up here like we just showed you a minute ago. We'll look at that here in a second. So really, storms aren't even firing on the dry line at all, even during this entire evening. It doesn't really move any. Okay, a lot of times those dry lines will move east as the storm moves east, but it looks like that storm system is just going to drag its heels. Okay, so let's go back here to our radar animation. So there's those thunderstorms here coming into central Oklahoma. What we said, about 2 o'clock in the morning. So let's take a look at the forecast sounding for Oklahoma City at this point in time. Massive monster cap. All right, so again, these are all elevated thunderstorms in here, assuming they can even hang on. So again, not surface based. If they're not surface based, they can't produce tornadoes. All right, so far I haven't seen anything that's going to tell us we're going to have tornadoes, other than the fact that that little sweet spot up here in the data, which the storm didn't, or the model didn't even produce a storm, and then maybe down here, but the models didn't produce really anything down there until it was too late. All right, so let's go 3 o'clock in the morning. A little bit of thunderstorms for Enid, and then Ponca City, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's it. Okay, so according to this model, I mean, it is absolutely a non-event to even discuss. So we'll look at a couple other data points from other models just to see, but right now the NAM is leading the charge as to our outcome. Let's go on into, by the way, tomorrow, do you like the 80s and 90s? Now this model sometimes does get a little too warm when it's a little dry, and we're going to moisten things up tomorrow, but sometimes it gets a little carried away, so we may not quite hit 90, but it should be at least in the upper 80s. But should be at least a couple of 90s showing up here across western, southwestern, northwestern Oklahoma. Boy, 'tis the season. That stuff's sneaking in there. That's nasty. Okay, let's go on into Monday. All right, so we're going to show you where those showers that develop in the morning hours, how it affects temperatures. So it looks like by 1 o'clock, we were able to warm up at least into low 70s. All right, and they're starting to get into the, looks like, upper 80s out here. So a lot of dry air here on that dry line bulge behind it. So we have to get that moisture to get back into that zone to take advantage of that spot. Let's see, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Oh, we went down to 70. We actually cooled. Now they're down to 69 in McAllister. So what that little light, sprinkle activity did, that thick cloud cover, it stopped us from heating up. So we're not really heating up at all here in the body of the state. Now out here in western Oklahoma, there was a little bit more breaks in the clouds, more sunshine, which is good because that's what you need to kind of help break the cap. And I say good if you want storms, let's put it that way. But it's still not significant. I mean, you're still low mid 70s. That's sad when you're really trying to break a cap. That's strong. Let's see. So that's it. So in other words, we're a little too cool on Monday. The dry line is still way too far out west. The storm system's way too far out west. We had some decent cape in a little area. We got some decent shear statewide, but you have to have all those ingredients come together at the right time. All right, so let's take a look at the Armageddon model. It's the old FV3. If you want a supercell, it'll find you one. So let's see what it does. It does that morning shower activity during the afternoon. There you go. It finds some supercells busting out here in that little spot I talked about in northwestern Texas, crossing over into Oklahoma, looks like by 7 o'clock. Now, what does the atmosphere look like on this particular model? It has a pretty good cap in place. It doesn't even have severe storms. So yet it produces a supercell looking storm without a forecast sounding that goes with it. Interesting. I'm not really sold on this model. I've used it a few times and it's always been disappointing. All right, that's sad because it's one of the newer ones that they're working on. All right, let's see. There's 8 o'clock. It's got this little helicity track, which normally would indicate potential damaging wind, hail, or a tornado. But again, let's take a look at the forecast data with that. Shear looks pretty decent at that point in time, but it's got a lot of dry air that's mixed down to the surface, and it still has a pretty good cap and mid-level dry air here. So in this case, it probably a little bit of hail, and that's it. All right, well, let's see what else we got. So let's now we're going well after dark. 4 o'clock. No, see, 10, 11 o'clock. Go to midnight. 1 o'clock in the morning. This guy just popped up out of nowhere. All right, right over Oklahoma City, for example. Still has a good cap with a temperature of 68 degrees. Okay, but this one in northwestern Texas is doing another try, and those are moving to central Oklahoma. But like we talked about there, it looks like the cap, of course, is still significant. There it is there. Very little elevated instability, very marginal in this data set, which means these are weak thunderstorms. So just like the NAM, all those nice, pretty bright red, these are all weak in here, except maybe down to far southern Oklahoma. We might have a little bit of hail with that. There's your 3 and 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, just thunderstorms that keep coming from Tulsa back into the metro. At this point in time, we've really worked over the atmosphere to eliminate the cap. But at the same time, we've also eliminated our instability. We've got almost zero instability. So this is, I mean, if you're wanting severe storms and you're wanting tornadoes, this is a horrible forecast for you. So that's good because I don't think any of us want that. Well, most of us. Storm Chaser's one of them. That's about it. All right, let's see. That was those two models. Let's see what else came in. We're looking at that data. So just keep in mind, what I tell you, what I show you, is reality, so that you can see what's actually happening in the atmosphere and why, so that when you hear somebody else interpret this for you and they're still saying the threat is increased, you'll know the actual real data, what it actually says and what's really going on. All right, so back out here in northwestern Texas, this other little model likes this little spot still. So decent cape, decent shear, not overly impressive. That's why it's got a marginal risk of a tornado. So I still have yet to see anything fire in this little spot here, but they keep trying in this spot here. The rest of the state, they're not doing anything until after right around midnight or so. Okay, let me see what else we got that's come in. Anything else? This one is, but it is slow, and these aren't in yet. Okay. Well, then that is what it is. All right. Let me see. Anything else I can look at? Everything I want to talk about. We'll do this guy here. All right, so we'll go back to the NAM. It's kind of like the lower resolution version of its little brother, the high resolution one. But I want to see what happens after the fact. The low resolution doesn't even produce anything. The little one did. Looks like this big one doesn't. Does it do anything at all? It does nothing. All right, let's go to Kansas. That's what I was going to do. Does it at least do anything up there? We'll see that real quick. Okay, there's doing something for Nebraska. Okay, in northern Kansas. All right, that makes sense. Let's see what the 3 kilometer does. All right, so there we go. We got Kansas and there we go. Kansas and Nebraska. Okay, so we know, of course, we've already looked at Oklahoma for the forecast soundings at this time of the night, which is late. Let's see what central Kansas looks like. Now, central Kansas, because they're closer to the upper level low, they don't really have a cap, right? That little red line that was shooting way out here is gone. So that would mean nighttime potential tornadoes in Kansas, even at the midnight hour. Looks like the analog go around EF2, EF3 on the strength scale. Now, that doesn't mean it's guaranteed. It just means that atmosphere is more favorable here at the tail end here in central Kansas. Now, this little look here that you see is like a little bow echo structure. All right, usually that means damaging straight line winds. And sometimes you can have a little QLCS tornado along the leading edge of it. In this particular case, they have, interesting, they have still a cap action in this part of Kansas to make that an elevated line of thunderstorms. But, let's do this. First off, let me see what happens. Yeah, so let's go down to the SIN. All right. So again, this is a cap. The brighter the color, the prettier the colors, the stronger the cap is. Okay. So there you go. 4, 5. Okay, so that's where the cap weakens in this area here. We get those thunderstorms to kind of get going around the midnight hour. And so it does weaken that cap in this area ahead of these thunderstorms. So there is a sweet spot that we looked at. I just happened to click. That's the deal is I just happened to click a spot on the map that had a favorable area where no cap was in place. Now I didn't look at this map first, so I'm just randomly picked it. But this is why I picked that spot and why it shows what it did, which is to see the word zero, the letter zero. Whereas if we go up ahead of this little squall line thing, you see we're back up to around minus 80 to around 100. So it looks like there's a favorable little area of no cap strength in this zone here. Interesting. But also, and sometimes you have to find like a needle in a haystack. So let me go down here to Oklahoma again. So let's assume that this is a thunderstorm here, out ahead of it, and there's some little small area where there's not a cap for that thunderstorm. It's all the way saturated, so that's a busted sounding. Never mind. Yep, forget it. That's just that rain from earlier on top. So in other words, we had that elevated rain here in Oklahoma City when I showed it to you, but outside on either side is a strong cap on both sides. So it's just that little sliver we had the thunderstorms. That's why it saturated that atmosphere there. Okay, anything else? Because I'm really not impressed with any of this. No, so let's just move on. So let's just show you the forecast. So temperatures into the, like I said, 80s to near 90 for Sunday, and then 80s for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then 70s Thursday, and then a cool spell for Friday onward, 40s at night. But I like this kind of weather. This is my kind of year. So bottom line is we still have tomorrow to get some high resolution data in here to see if anything has changed. So obviously the trend has been to move that system not only to the north, but also back to the west by a good 6 hours delayed. So because it's 6 hours delayed, it doesn't get to come in and at the right time, which is with our max daytime heating. So what happens is then we stay capped. It did have some little instability that came out ahead of it for some cloud cover and a little bit of light shower activity on Monday, which also kind of helped keep things more stable so we don't get to heat up that much. And the dry line never really progresses. I really was thinking the dry line would start moving east, but apparently it's just going to sit there in Texas, which means it's lost its upper support by that point for the storm system. If the storm system were further further south, then as it would move east, it would shove the dry line to the east as what we'll call a Pacific cold front catches up to it and moves it all along. When that happens, that brute forcing can break the cap along the leading edge of it and trigger a thin line of thunderstorms. Sometimes they're a little severe, but not always. They can be kind of marginal. Anyway, so in their prior data sets, that had indicated could be on the table, but then this whole thing went north and west, and well, that's now off the table. So I'm like, well, how are we going to get it to rain around here? So I don't know. It's gonna be hard finding a storm. So I guess just in the data right now for tonight, my favorite two areas, if we were to get a tornado anywhere around us, would be northwest Oklahoma, just northwest of Woodward. The models didn't produce one, but there was enough ingredients there. Looks like that could be a nice spot for one to go. Southwestern and south central Kansas, another be a favorite area for later in the evening. From either from a storm that happens, around 6 or 7 o'clock there that moves into that area, or something happens a few hours after near the dry line. So that would be a favorite area for tornadoes Monday. And the other one would be in far northwest Texas, kind of around the Childress area, kind of southwest of there, and then those would move northeast towards southwest Oklahoma. Problem is, the models really didn't give me much to go with as far as anything good. As far as a combination of everything we need to produce a tornado, it's kind of on the so we might have something there. Other than that, we have this elevated signal for some thunderstorms here in west central and central Oklahoma along the I-35 corridor during the midnight-ish hour, but those look like they'll be mostly non-severe. That's what the data says. I don't have anything else to tell you than that. We'll look at tomorrow and we'll see if anything's changed. What would have to happen? Well, the system would have to come back east again. It'd have to dip back south again. That would have to happen. The models would have to be too warm on our lid or cap in the atmosphere. In other words, those temperatures around 800 millibars, somewhere around there. Instead of them being like plus 22 to 23 degrees, whatever it is, they'd have to be like 19 or 20. So that's a significant change, believe it or not. 3 degrees Celsius is significant at that layer. So that would have to cool down significantly, and that would help to eliminate the cap and then get some storms to go. So there's a lot of ifs, and ifs. So that would be a very, what do we call those? Brain's not working tonight. A conditional event, right? If we could get this and if we can get that, then yeah, sure, we'll have some supercells and a couple tornadoes, etc. But that's a lot of ifs, and right now there's no ifs in the data for the models. But maybe tomorrow they'll show some ifs, or maybe they'll keep it this way, and the trend will continue. So that's what I got for you. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks for tuning in. This was a little longer, but I hadn't really got to look at the whole data set yet, so I kind of looked at some of it with you. I just got a little sneak peek before we started. H.L. Fowler, thank you for the stars, by the way, on Facebook. Appreciate you. Rami, also thank you. Kristen, thank you. And Crystal, thank you as well. And you guys on YouTube, also thanks for coming in and joining the party tonight on Rumble. Also thank you guys as well. Let's think. Anything else? I think that's about it. So I will do another live tomorrow. I don't know when. It may be in the afternoon, like lunchtime-ish, or it just might be in the evening again. It just depends. I might just do like a little post on the wall. But that's about it. Yeah, okay, so I know you guys on YouTube are angry at the SPC, throwing some shade their way. I gotta tell you, let me tell you some inside baseball, because why not, right? And then we'll sign off. So remember, Storm Prediction Center, their whole main job is to predict thunderstorms. That's it. So night and day, they're looking for needles in a haystack all across the U.S. They're trying to find areas where there's going to be some storms. All right. And they look at the setups. They try to compare to past events, and they try to kind of get ahead of it. Now, what they do is their audience is not you guys, just so you know that. Their audience is emergency management, big corporations, government entities, blah, blah, blah. So everybody who wants a little heads up as early as they can that there might be something, that's really the audience. TV takes that and then paints it as so, Armageddon as so, and then hypes it up as so, uses strong verbiage, and then the Chicken Little is on. So the deal is that the two are mutually exclusive. So the TV guys can do whatever they want, say whatever they want. The SPC doesn't care what they do or say. They come in, they look at the next data set, just like I did tonight, and they fine tune, and then they kind of move things around. They typically do not go too high too early. In other words, they'll put out a slight risk all day long. That's the first level. big deal. Level 1, you can do level 1 all the way up to the event and then change it if you want to. As their confidence increases, meaning the model data is less chaotic, there's a lot more agreements. So you have different model suites with different physics, different parameters, and if they all start to agree, then hey, there's something to it. Therefore, their confidence goes up. Therefore, the shadings of color of the avocado goes up. You add more to your avocado. So you go to slight, you go to the enhanced, you go to the moderate, and what that means is they expect more severe weather reports over a given area, and that could be anything. It could be the hail, it could be wind, it could be tornadoes, whatever. And as they get closer, they try to fine-tune by picking out which one of those is the threat to focus on and all that stuff. So that's what their role is. That's what they do. Now, at the end of the day, they're human, just like me. They're just like, I'm a forecaster. They have a degree just like I do, and they give it their best shot. And the forecaster comes in after the one before him. They're not the same person. They don't have the same brain. They look at things differently, and they're in this position where, let's say, dude 1 comes in and he's Armageddon. Dude 2 comes in and goes, there's nothing that's going to happen. But dude 2 can't erase all of dude 1 because then it looks weird, because dude 1 can come back in the next day and put it back. And then you have this topsy-turvy, which one is it, guys? So they have to be in sync, right? They have to be in unison. So they leave little notes for each other. And if there is a change, like a new trend, they'll half-step it. In other words, they'll start to back off on the wording. Maybe they'll kind of redesign the color. They usually kind of keep the rating, though. And that's why they usually keep it at a slight, for the most part. For whatever reason, they went enhanced this time around, just because the pattern looked pretty good, and the analogs of that pattern looked pretty good. So somebody got a little excited early. They could have kept it a slight the whole time and just fine. But, whatever. Each person's different. So that's all that happens. Now, when I worked in TV, I didn't care what the SPC said. So, in other words, I drew my own outlooks, which I'm sure they didn't like. But that's okay. I do my own thing, just like here. But there was it May 2003? Maybe it was May 2003, I think. I don't know. We had a tornado in the metro, and the next day I predicted another one in the metro. And so I drew my own little high risk in like the southwest part of the city or something. And of course, that got everybody at the TV station going, huh? What? That's not the SPC. I said, no, that's AT. And my boss, Rick Mitchell, at the time, he was like, okay, that's what you're going for, huh? I said, yeah, this is going to happen. I mean, I spoke it as though it was truth, and there wasn't anything you could say or do about it, because it was the truth. And then the next day, tornado happened right in the spot I had put on the map and circled. And after that, he was a believer. He never questioned me ever again at that point in time. But to me, it was just obvious and it was easy. Now, did the SBC do a high risk net there? No, they didn't, because they're trying to do a more larger area, and I was doing hyper local forecasting. In other words, where I pick a sweet spot. In this particular case, I think I was favoring a meso low or triple point or something back then. I can't even remember. And so there's a little small area that's really enhanced with a wind field. Storm chasers know about it, and so I just kind of did that for the story, and that was it. So that's an example where you don't have to do everything the SPC does. You can do your own thing. They do their own thing. Like I said, they're not mutually exclusive. So, but that's it. So that's kind of how that works. That's the back end. They'll get it wrong, just like sometimes maybe I'll get it wrong. Just depends on how willing, how far on the limb do you want to go. That's always the unnerving part. But they're usually pretty conservative. Even on the big days we've had for us, everybody talks about May 3rd. That wasn't even a high-risk day. I think that was a slight-risk day. And then as the new model data suite came in, they kept bumping it up. Because this new data came in, questions about the event were alleviated during that day, each step. And they could look at surface parameters. They could look at the cloud cover. They could look at all these new tools we have for now, we call nowcasting. So their confidence kept going up and up and up, and therefore the concern kept going up and up and up. So by the time they issued the high. It was like, I think 3 o'clock or 3:30. I think the storms had developed by 3:30 or 4. So I mean, it was like, okay, that was a little late, guys. But hey, it is what it is, and they put it out there, and that was kind of a bad day for us. That's kind of how it happens. And our models now, that was back in 1999, we're way better now than they were back then. And so that kind of stuff shouldn't happen anymore. You should be able to pick all that stuff out a day ahead of time. With the stuff that we have to work with now, forecasting on meteorology side is way easier now than it was when I first started back in the mid 90s. So I mean, it's way far advanced. We've got some really cool model suites, and I show you a lot of them to look at. That way you know how things are going. But Casey, 2008, yeah, you're right. So the problem is with my brain, everything runs together. It's frustrating. I know guys that you can mention one thing, they'll pick it out. Oh, it's 1947, back on whenever so-and-so did the, and I remember that, and I'm like, dude, my brain does not work that way. I don't remember what year it was. I remember where I was. It's all one big blah. So that's the one thing I wish I could do better, but I can't. I'm just not wired that way. But there's some people that are. They're like a walking encyclopedia, and they can remember every little thing about the event. I'm just like, how do you do that? I'm just like, here today, gone tomorrow. Like, give me the next one. I've already deleted it from my memory. I don't have enough brain cells to go around, so I got to dump that to fill it up with the next one. That's how I look at it. All right, so anyway, that's enough silliness for me. I'm going to get out of here, but now you guys know the whole skinny so far. Like I said, I'll give an update tomorrow, and then also, of course, on Monday, we'll do a live Monday lunchtime, as I usually do from my vehicle. And I'll tell you if anything has really changed in that aspect, and kind of outline where still think the best possibilities are for seeing a tornado and when, that kind of deal. And remember, if you're new here, no, the state is not filled with horses and tornadoes. Where we all, take horses to everywhere we go. No, no to both. So we drive cars like everybody else. And the tornadoes that we do have, they're few and far between, and they're mostly over open farmland that hits nothing but trees and grass and wheat, that kind of stuff. Do we occasionally get them in the cities? Yeah, occasionally. Most of them are small. EF0, EF1s on a scale of 0 to 5. Those are the baby tornadoes, I call them. So that's the majority of the ones that we get, which are almost as harmless as you can get. I mean, they're not totally harmless, but they're as close as you can be. Adequate shelter, no problem at all, even on a 2 or a 3. So that's kind of the way that goes. The only ones really that make the news, that obviously causes all the problems, are the 4s and 5s. But thank goodness those are literally 1 or 2 every 10 years or something like that. It's a very low number, very low probability. So there you go. All right, well, I got to get out of here. You guys have a great rest of your night and a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk again soon. See ya.